Hi, my name is Annie. What do you know about parental control? Well, I'm an expert in the field. I wanted to tell you about the worst years of my life, which I spent almost literally like a prisoner. And my mom and dad were, sort of, my jailers. Now I'm 17, but the whole story started when I was 13, and my family was living in a nice house with a pool and a patio. I had gotten a brand new video game and I was totally enthusiastically checking it out in the living room. And my mom was doing something in the kitchen while looking for my baby brother Andrew. At some point, the landline phone rang, which I heard, and Mom went to answer it in the next room. And she swears that she told me to look after Andrew, which I didn't hear. And the back door was open, and we had a swimming pool there. I remember the only thing that finally distracted me from that video game was my mom's cry of full horror. My little brother drowned that day. There are no words to describe a family grief like that. There were lots of tears. I think everybody felt guilty back then, but nobody could change anything. Mom kept saying that nothing was my fault, with her eyes red from tears, but the more she told me that, the more I felt miserable. Oh, if only that phone didn't ring back then, or I wasn't playing that stupid video game. By the way, I could never bring myself to touch it since then. It's no wonder that after what happened, my parents started to strictly control me. I know that everybody's under supervision when they are underage, but I was subject to the strictest and sometimes the most extreme type of supervision. My mom was not only driving me to school, but she would bring me to the classroom while holding my hand. Of course, everybody would laugh at me the first couple of times, but until they got used to it. By the way, speaking of holding hands, Mom insisted on me being everywhere with her, be it at the grocery store, or her visit to the beauty salon, or whenever we were already out of our car. She would take my hand. I was not allowed to even meet my friends somewhere outside. Mom insisted on accompanying me either to the mall or to the movies, depending on where we were supposed to meet, and she was constantly nearby. Or she gave me an alternative. I could invite my friends to my place so that she could watch us. None of what I mentioned was actually fun, and at some point, I just stopped being invited anywhere. What can I say? I couldn't blame my friends for having abandoned me. Who likes hanging out with someone else's mom, especially with a control freak like my mom was? And this definitely made me upset, when on social media I saw photos of my friends having fun at the amusement park, for example. But at the same time, I couldn't blame my mom either, because she was apparently afraid that something was going to happen to me, and after she had lost one of her children, she couldn't bear to lose the other. Thus, the only thing left for me to hope for was to just wait until the grief subsided and hopefully my mom's grip would loosen. This sort of happened almost a year after the tragedy. I met one guy at school whose name was Terry, and I really liked him, especially taking into account that I was lucky and he made the first move. One day he noticed me staring at him during lunch, and he just came up to me and said, "Hi." I remember back then I thought that it was the easiest beginning of a relationship ever, and that if he invited me anywhere, even to the opera, which I hated, I'd say yes. And he actually did, and the coming weekend we were supposed to see each other at the park. Oh, also, he was new to our school and didn't know about my mom yet. Of course, at home, I had to tell my parents everything and literally beg my mom to let me go there all alone. I mean, without her accompanying me, because it was supposed to be a real date and it was definitely not about a meeting the parents thing. I guess after I've given you a bit of the background, you can at least try to imagine how low my chances were then. Finally, my dad met me halfway, saying that I could go to the park on that date under certain conditions. Mom was supposed to give me a ride to at least see what Terry looked like. I was supposed to send her a text every half hour indicating that everything was okay, and I had to be back home by 7 p.m., taking into account that I was supposed to meet with Terry at 5 p.m. It was still something, I thought, and I went to my room anticipating the coming weekend. The date went great. We talked a lot, and it turned out we had so many things in common. Like both of us adored horses, and we even took a short ride on one of them in that park. Even the fact that I had to send my mom those stupid texts saying that I was okay while hiding from Terry didn't ruin everything. We had an amazing time, and then we left the park and set off toward my house. Since he promised to walk me there, I would have bet that he was planning to kiss me at the doorstep. But suddenly, I noticed my dad's car across the street. I tried to pretend as if everything was okay and said nothing to Terry, but the whole time we were walking, that car moved slowly and silently somewhere nearby. When we reached our destination, the car stopped, pretending to be invisible, and my dad just appeared as if nothing happened. Of course, this totally negated any kissing that could have happened that night. And the exact same situation repeated itself a week later when Terry took me to the movies. But this time, when I wanted to go to the toilet in the middle of everything, I noticed my parents sitting a few rows away from us, pretending they didn't see me. Oh, I was so angry at them, especially since they made me a promise. But do you know what their excuse was? Dad said that the first time he accidentally saw us and simply decided to not interrupt. And then they just decided to watch the same movie, and there was nothing criminal about that. What did they think I was, a baby? And by the way, this was the very first time I rebelled against them. I finally spoke out about their control problems and even suggested that they visit a psychiatrist. The last part was rude, I know, and I was severely punished for that. They told me to go upstairs and stay in my room without any dinner. I mean, I still was too furious and irritated to eat anyway. Later that night, I found myself unable to sleep. Gosh, I was so mad at my parents. Couldn't they see that they'd been ruining my life? That was it. I made up my mind that I was going to run away. Well, it's not that I wanted to be emancipated or anything. I just wanted to spend some time outside the house and show them in the morning that nothing bad had happened to me. I snuck out through the window and hurt my elbow so bad that tears came to my eyes, but I didn't give up on my plan. It was only once I was outside that I realized I left my phone in my room. I decided to go to Terry's since I had no close friends anymore. You know that, right? Anyways, his house was really far from mine, and I decided to, just risk it. And in the next maybe 30 minutes, I was already there, standing under his window, and judging by the fact that the lights were still on, he wasn't sleeping. I grabbed several small stones from the driveway and began throwing them at his window. I've seen this a couple times in movies and finally had a chance to try to do it myself. It was really exciting. While Terry was climbing down to me, totally surprised and happy, I finally felt some kind of freedom. I thought that nothing could be more romantic and that I was so smart to do what I did, until we heard a car approaching Terry's house in a rush. Yup, it was them, my parents. They always demanded addresses and contact numbers of anyone I socialized with. I was worried that they might cause a scene, so I rushed to them, followed by Terry, but that didn't help. They began screaming and shouting and knocking at Terry's front door to make his parents aware of everything. God, they even made Terry guilty in my big escape and threatened that poor family with court. Do I even have to tell you that I no longer had a boyfriend? Since then, my home imprisonment turned into real torture, although I always thought that it couldn't get worse. I was no longer allowed to leave the house without taking Mom or Dad with me. I wasn't allowed to lock the door whenever I went to take a bath or a shower, and I had only 10 minutes to use the toilet, because whenever I stayed in there for too long, my mom would knock on the door asking whether I was okay. Oh, yeah, Dad also nailed the window in my room shut so that I couldn't escape again. I was devastated and totally broken. I remember I wanted nothing back then but to be somebody else, or to have other parents, and I couldn't wait till I turned 18, went away to college, and left that damn prison that my mom and dad called home. Honestly, I never talked to anyone about my life because from the outside, things didn't seem that bad, you know? I mean, everybody tries to protect their children, and no one can judge others in that respect. At least, my mom always said so. But then, one family, the Gibbons, bought the house across the street. It happened so that, at first, my mom invited Mrs. Gibbons for a cup of coffee. Then Mr. Gibbons decided to play golf with my dad, and very soon our two families became friends. But one day, it turned out that our families had much more in common than just children who were the same age. Yes, they had a son, Jeremy. He was homeschooled, so I was literally the only peer he could talk to, and he was a little bit weird. I found out that when Mom invited them to come over for dinner, Jeremy asked permission for every single thing he was going to do, be it having a tuna salad or going to the restroom. And his mom always told him what to do, like, don't forget to wash your hands, or be nice and say hello, and stuff. Yep, his parents also turned out to be obsessed with control, although I must say that apart from that strange pattern, they were totally normal and even funny. Of course, after the odd behavior from our neighbors, my parents decided to discuss it while cleaning the table. I seized the moment and, as if by chance, said that they were not all that different from us. Mom tried to object, saying that they were trying to protect me after they had lost my brother, but this time she sounded a little less confident. I don't know if there were any further discussions, but soon after that day, my own situation changed a little bit. Now I can say with a certain amount of relief that I'm allowed to see my friends again without any presence of parents. I still have to be at home relatively early, at 9 p.m., but at least I can spend as much time in a bathroom as I